So, hi everyone. I'm Laurabeth, and I'm the Executive Director of Partnerships at Best Delegate. And I'm so excited to be here tonight with all of you to be able to share top tips to help you win many of these and more. I've been doing Model UN for over 17 years, and I've had the amazing opportunity to travel the world. I've been to more than 60 different countries and to work with students and educators and even UN officials and governments to help people do MUN. I have loved this activity. It's helped me be even more confident and develop more of a sense of collaboration. And I'm so excited to be able to share many of the tips that I've learned and that our students and our chairs have learned over the years and how they can help you to become an award-winning delegate as well. And I'll share I'm part of the team at Best Delegate. We provide the world's leading resources for Model UN to help you gain confidence and really become an amazing delegate. And at Best Delegate, we say that the best delegate brings out the best in other delegates. So while tonight we're going to be talking about how to win awards, I also want to remind everyone that in Model UN, being collaborative and being welcoming are also really important things and just gaining that confidence. So feel free to take these tips and apply them for wherever you are in your Model UN journey. And I'm so excited to see all of you here today. I see we have people joining us from Colorado, students looking to improve their public speaking. And we have students from New York and Virginia and Pennsylvania and all over, just hoping to learn a lot about Model UN. And I'll also share we have a mix of different experience levels. We have students as young as sixth grade here, and we also have advisors in the room as well. So it's great to see so many of you joining us here, looking for ways to enhance your Model UN skills and maybe win some awards along the way. So I'd love to go ahead and share with all of you what you can expect tonight. You're going to start off by getting my top 10 tips to help you win awards. And you'll also get a chance to learn from our amazing experts. We've brought together 5 incredible panelists, 2 high schoolers and 3 college and recent college graduates who are all award-winning MUNers who are going to share their advice on excelling in Model UN. And then we're going to take some time to answer all of your questions as well. I know many of you submitted questions in advance, and we've incorporated those into the event. But if you have questions throughout, please also feel free to drop them in the chat. And at the end of tonight's event, we'll also share about ways that Best Delegate can help you learn Model UN, including our summer camps that many of our awesome college staffers here today have worked on in the past as well. So I want to start, without further ado, with our top 10 tips for winning awards in Model UN. And I'll give these to you in 10 minutes or less so I can turn it over to our amazing, amazing mentors. So without further ado, tip number 1. Remember that your chairs are MUNers just like you. It is so important to treat them well. Chairs are looking for respect and passionate debate and smooth sailing and generally grateful and happy delegates. They spent a lot of time preparing background guides and preparing for the conference, and they want a fun and welcoming environment. So remember, they're people too, and treat them well. My second tip for doing well in Model UN: brand yourself and your ideas. It's really important to help set yourself apart when there's lots of people with similar ideas in a Model UN committee. If you're able to stand out, people remember your idea or your block or your resolution. So come up with a creative name. Maybe you're the Krispy Kremes if you're talking about food access, or maybe you come up with something that people really remember that resonates with the topic and resonates with you and your committee and your position. So remember to brand yourself in committee so that you stand out. Tip number 3, structure your speech with hook, point, action. You don't have a long time to give your opening speech in Model UN, so you want to apply structure to grab the audience's attention and really effectively use that time. And if you don't know what hook, point, action is, check out our video on our YouTube channel, and in 1 minute or less, you'll learn how to give a really successful opening speech. Tip number 4, be stylish with your public speaking. You don't want to be monotonous or boring. You want to think about your style and consider which speakers have impressed you and why. Back in the day, Emma Watson gave an amazing speech on the He for She initiative, and she delivered it with the flair that she does whenever she acts in Harry Potter or anything else. And she said, "If not me, who? If not now, when?" And the way she delivered that whole speech was as if she had rehearsed it for a movie, and it had incredible style and flair. So think about your own style as you're preparing to give an MUN speech, and it can help to set you apart. Tip 5, frame the debate. Lots of people will share lots of different opinions, but it's your job to help bring it together. So here's an example. If you're in a committee on the topic of climate change, and there's been a moderated caucus on the topic of desertification, one delegate, the delegate of Yemen, pointed out that it seems like the committee is in agreement that desertification and climate change related natural disasters are the most critical sub-issues of this topic to address. Yemen would like to draw the committee's attention to the working paper, Hot as a Sauna, which in detail addresses desertification and natural disasters. So this was an example where a delegate pulled together what other people were talking about and then called attention to what they were working on. And the funny part or the punny part is that hot as a sauna is both like the heat of the sauna, and if you actually pronounce it correctly, then it would have been the capital of Yemen. So that was an example how they painted and framed the topic so that everyone would remember the idea that they were sharing. Tip number 6, bring out the best in other delegates. You don't want to just focus on shooting down other people's ideas. Chairs want to see delegates that work together towards positive solutions. So definitely focus on elevating everyone and your group's ideas together. Tip number 7, write a strong resolution. It's important to have a resolution that really does stand out. Chairs look for both strong ideas and details, as well as well-formatted documents. They take note of what a resolution looks like. And nowadays, it's easier than ever to utilize, tools on the internet to help you figure out how to format these. And on Best Delegate's website, we've got some great resources to help with that as well. Tip number 8, don't correct the chair. If you need to, or if making that procedural change gives you this opportunity to speak and you haven't had it, then you can consider it. But ordinarily, you really only want to correct the chair's parliamentary procedure if it's really essential. Otherwise, they can find it a little bit annoying, and maybe it subconsciously may impact their decisions when it comes time to make awards. Tip 9, practice, practice, practice. Everyone's nervous at their first MUN conference. It happens. But the best way that you can be ready to excel is to do public speaking exercises and mini debates and practice simulations. And if you want to do those with your schools, we've got a ton of resources on how to do practice simulations and even run your own, mini conferences for your team. And tip 10, don't be afraid to ask for feedback. Ask your chair, ask your fellow committee members at times, and also your teammates when you're practicing with your Model UN program. It can help you understand what you're doing well and what you can continue to improve upon. And I also want to give everyone a bonus tip, and that is use some of the resources that we've prepared on Best Delegate's website to help you excel. We've made an awesome cheat sheet to Model UN, and no, it's not cheating to use that. It includes tips on how to prepare your opening speech. It includes tips on how to think about issues and come up with ideas for your resolution. It also covers some of the key terms that people need to know when they're getting started with Model UN, as well as the flow in a committee. It also gives you the format to make a motion. So if you don't know how, there's easy to fill in the blank motions that you can use. And there's also a progress tracker, so you can track how you're doing at a conference. And if you're just getting started with Model UN and you print one of these for each conference that you go to, you'll also have a record of how you've been doing in Model UN over the course of your time. And if you want to, please feel free to use the link in the chat, or you can take a look at this QR code or go to bit.ly/MUN cheat sheet. And we've got all of the resources on there as well to help you excel in Model UN. And now, without further ado, I am incredibly excited to introduce our team as promised in 10 minutes or less. I'm now going to hand it over to our panelists. So we have 5 incredible panelists joining us tonight, 2 of whom are high school students, Annabelle and Sophia, as well as 3 amazing college and recent college graduates who all have done incredibly well in the Model UN circuit. Many of us have won 10 plus Gavels and really done incredibly well in Model UN. And so I'm going to give each of our panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves and also to share their top tip on excelling in Model UN. So I'll stop sharing my screen, and if all of our fabulous panelists could please turn their cameras back on, we will get the chance to hear from all of them on a variety of questions that all of you have asked to help us excel in Model UN. So if we don't mind, Bella, could you kick us off with a brief introduction? Feel free to share your name, your school, a little bit of your MUN experience or record, and your top tip for becoming an award-winning, confident MUNer.
Yeah, of course. Um, so my name is Bella. I went to Boston University for undergrad. I started doing Model United Nations while I was at it. I've done it. I've met people from all over the world. My internet connection is unstable. And it really helped me become a more confident and fully realized version of myself. I'm really appreciative of it for helping me gain a lot of confidence. And I would definitely say that my top tip for becoming an award-winning MUN delegate is, is my connection okay, Laurabeth? Okay. Um, it would be especially once you've like started don't compare yourself to other delegates can be a good example to follow. You can try and find things that you like that other delegates do, but I would really discourage people from thinking too much about what other delegates have that maybe they don't have or what other delegates do better than them. I found my most competitive success when I took the examples that I had been given and interpreted them in my own way, because at the end of the day, you know what you're good at, you know what you feel comfortable doing, and you can add your own flavor and your own tradition to Model United Nations and have a lot of success with it. So I'd say look at past examples, but don't be afraid to ultimately be yourself.
Love that, Bella. Thanks for the advice. Be yourself and don't be afraid to do Model UN in your own way. Next up, we have JJ.
Hi everyone, my name is JJ. I use he, they pronouns. I'm a recent graduate of Claremont McKenna College, where I competed on our collegiate MUN team for 3 years. And that was the only amount of time that I did MUN, but it was still fantastic and memorable nonetheless. There, I competed at a team record of 18 conferences during my time there. So, yeah, just overall had a blast with it and really enjoyed not only the awards, but also the friends I made along the way. In terms of my top tip, I would say be someone that every single person in the room is going to remember. And I think that either through your branding, even just like complimenting someone's preparedness or leaving that positive impression in committee, that's always going to pay off in the long run when you encounter delegates again at another conference, or you inspire someone else to extend that same compassion to others of how to lead with kindness or how to lead with excellence. And I think overall, just thinking about what is the impact and impression that I want to leave others is something that will really pay off in your Model UN journey, both for the chairs, the other people that you work with, and I'm sure yourself. So always go into a conference and think about what do I want to leave behind out of this experience for others.
Love that, JJ. Be someone that everyone remembers in a good way. We also have those delegates that we don't necessarily remember in a good way, but if you could be one of the ones that stand out in a positive way, that's awesome. Ryan, would you please share your top tip and introduction as well?
Yeah, so my name's Ryan. I graduated from Florida State University, where I did Model UN for 4 years. And uh, several of those years I spent leading and training the team as well. I think I finished out at around 27 or 28 conferences in total. Um, so a little too much MUN maybe. Um, but I primarily did crisis style. Touched the GA once and had a great time, but definitely found something else I preferred. Um, the top tip that I really kind of figured out after all my years competing and then training other people is to really do your research, but not necessarily in the way that you traditionally go about it. Um, Finding out as much as you can about the topic, but also just the general issues surrounding whatever your topics you're talking about or whatever position you're representing. The more in depth you go with understanding the topic holistically, the better prepared you're going to be for when people bring up other things that maybe weren't in the background guide or weren't the first thing that someone thought of. So, really dedicating yourself to not just doing research, but actually learning about what you're going to be discussing benefits you, in the long run a ton, but also really, really helps you to perform well and never feel like you're out of your depth when you're in committee.
Thanks, Ryan. Great tip. Research pays off. Those are our 3 college level Model UN advice givers on our panelists tonight. We also have 2 amazing high school delegates. Annabelle, would you please introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Annabelle. I'm from Virginia. I attend Western Albemarle High School in the Charlottesville area, where I serve as the current co-president of my Model UN team. I've had a lot of Model UN. I've been doing it for about the past 5 years now, and I've loved every bit of it, not just with, being on the circuit and being a part of my school's MUN team. I've also really enjoyed getting involved with all the different conferences through Best Delegate. I would say my top tip is honestly just have fun with it. I have a little anecdote. So I have a little hobby outside of Model UN. I play the trumpet, and my mentor once told me the person who always gets the gig is the one who has the most fun. And that I found that piece of advice has really applied to kind of every aspect of my life. And I've really tried to take that into account when I'm competing on the Model UN circuit. A lot of times people tend to really focus on winning that award, but really, if you just have fun with it and really focus on when you come into committee, how am I going to solve this issue? How can I, bring the energy to this committee and just be so solution oriented? Everything's going to come with it. The leadership's going to come, the style is going to come. All of it is just going to come as long as you just enjoy yourself and take advantage of every opportunity. And also, if you're having fun, people are going to tend to gravitate to you more, and it's just going to all work out in the end.
Thanks, Annabelle. Great advice. Have fun, and you'll win more gigs and more MUN awards along the way. And last but certainly not least, Sophia from Langley High School. Would you please introduce yourself, share a little bit about your record, and your top tip for excelling in Model UN?
Of course. So, hi, my name is Sophia. I attend Langley High School, which is in the DMV region. And I've done MUN only in high school, but I've had many pleasant experiences. I had the honor of serving on my secretariat this year, and we won 7 best large delegations as a school. So our program as a whole is pretty, it's been pretty successful to say the least. And me personally, last year I broke my region's record for most Gavels in a year with 8. And in total, I have quite a few. And I'm a big believer in evidence. So I have a couple to present here. As you can see, they're real. But my general tip, and this is probably my number 1 tip for any kind of committee and any kind of conference, is to be flexible all of the time. Because if you're too gravitated towards your initial plan and your initial belief, you're not going to be able to ride the wave of committee, and you simply just cannot fight the force of 30 other delegations that are telling you that they're moving in a different direction. So even though you might be emotionally attached to the plan that you've been developing for the past 2 weeks, you need to always be ready to be flexible, not only with other delegates, but with yourself and with your partner delegate, in order to better navigate and to hopefully get the best award that you can in that committee. So that's my top tip.
Great advice, Sophia. Thank you. And now we're going to turn it over to a lot of the questions that all of you have asked. So different panelists will answer a variety of these questions. And we're going to start with some questions on research. So our first question we got from Adriana is, how should I research for a MUN conference? And what are some helpful websites to use? So if one of our panelists wants to kick it off, that'd be great.
Sure, I can kick it off. So to answer your question, researching for MUN conferences, it really does depend on what kind of committee you're doing. Of course, if you're going with a GA or spec, it might be a political topic that's already in the air in your whatever time period that you're doing it in. For instance, like there are a lot of relevant topics on territorial disputes that might come up now in media. Versus if you're doing a crisis committee, you might be doing things that have been out of date, right? Like you might be researching a committee that takes place in the 14th century. And what I've come to find incredibly beneficial when doing research is to try to find a niche element of it that you can bring to the table. If you're only doing surface level and general research, that's stuff that every other delegate is going to know and going to have done research on. If you show up and you have research done from Wikipedia and the New York Times, that's fantastic. And that gives you base level research. But what you really want to do is get depth and get topics and corners and crevices that other delegates aren't going to be as familiar with, because that'll give you more opportunities, not only in resolution papers, but also in back room and front room for those crisis delegates out there. And it's going to make you shine and stand out as a delegate. So that's my best advice.
Thanks, Sophia. Our next question is, this is my first time doing MUN. This is from Isha. How do you recommend new delegates learn MUN procedure? And if one of our panelists wants to take this one, that would be great.
I can take this one. I think that, to be honest, the Best Delegate resources were something that I used long before I ever started working at Best Delegate, because there are a lot of really good procedural guides and documents that have like quick cheat sheets for procedure, like Laurabeth mentioned already. So those are really helpful. I would say the biggest advice I have for learning MUN procedure is, quite honestly, to not be afraid to ask. Like Laurabeth said, again, your chairs are ultimately delegates as well. They are people just like you who appreciate Model United Nations. And I found the best way when I was first starting was to approach my chairs with humility, and to be able to admit when I was unsure if I was doing something correctly, and to also ask them for feedback. In my very first ever committee, this is something that I did extensively. I worked with the chair. I was honest with her and I said, this is my first time doing MUN. And at the end of the day, it ultimately didn't hinder me at all. I still won an award. And more than that, I was able to learn an incredible amount. So I would say take those resources that are available to you and approach it with humility. And also don't be afraid if you need to have a little cheat sheet at your side while you're in committee. No one is going to think less of you. It's not anything to be ashamed about. Everyone has to start somewhere.
And if anything, they'll want a copy of your cheat sheet and to be able to use it themselves too. Our next question we got from Mitch and David. What are your best tips for writing a position paper? And JJ, if you could help us with that one, that'd be great.
Awesome. Yeah. So for me, I think writing a position paper was one of the most fun parts for me as a General Assembly delegate. And I think at the high school level, research is super important, and merits an award of its own oftentimes. So I think that in terms of the best tips for writing a position paper is first to just identify and show the chair that you know a little something about your country. So especially in the past action section, you can kind of write, okay, here's what Colombia has previously done for indigenous rights, if that's your topic, right? And to be able to cite a past law, a program, or a policy action to see what has actually been possible for my country to accomplish. And then the question that you need to ask yourself in the position paper is, what direction do I want to take the country in my committee? And so when you get to some possible solutions, kind of adding on to Sophia's answer, you can kind of find what that specialization or niche is to build upon the previous efforts of your country. And I always like to present some new angle or new perspective, because I think chairs are always looking for that fresh, exciting, innovative ideas that you're going to be driving in committee, that your country is capable of achieving. So I would definitely just kind of assess, what has my country been capable of in the past, and what is my country able to do as we step forward into the future. I think having those two frames of mind are really going to create really polished position papers that your chairs will connect to your working committee later.
Great question. Okay, another related question. So we talked about position papers, but I see a question in the chat from Coltrane. Do you have any recommendations for how to prepare to write specific and compelling resolutions? Any recommendations on writing resolutions? Ryan, do you want to give us any advice on this one?
Sure, yeah. So something I found really helped a lot of my GA delegates who were very hesitant because resolutions are very big and scary and are things you have to collab with a lot of people on. I had them look at actual UN resolutions. I don't think it's something that necessarily gets talked about a ton, but I found that showing them to my delegates for training showed them how in-depth they're supposed to be, showed them how detailed they need to be, and show them the kind of things that are in there. Because anyone can put an idea or like the creation of a new body or a solution to an issue in a resolution. But unless you can explain like where it's going to be operating, how it's going to be funded, every little detail that someone can hit you on when they want to take down your resolution, you aren't going to necessarily be as prepared. But if you really take a look at what, because it's model UN, so we're basing it off of a real thing. If you take a look at the real thing, you're able to understand the model a lot better.
Thank you, Ryan. Great advice. One more question on preparation. Rebecca asked us, how do you prepare for a no-tech conference? Is there anything specific you recommend students come in prepared with under these circumstances? And for context, most conferences allow you to have a computer in the room. Occasionally, they'll say computer downtime or computer uptime, but most conferences do allow them. So if Bella, you don't mind briefly answering for us how people can prepare for no-tech conferences, that would be great.
Yeah, I have two pieces of advice. The first is to definitely prepare physical elements. So it's okay to bring in notes, like I said before. Sometimes people will have a research binder. I would personally recommend a research folder. I would say it's great to have notes, but make sure what you're bringing in is the most concise version of what you need. Because based on my personal experience, if you come in with a whole binder or too many notes, it's going to worry you. It's going to stress you out. You're going to be flipping through the pages. You're going to look more anxious, and you really want to present as though you're an expert on the topic, even if you know there's gaps in your knowledge that maybe you could fill with a computer. So make sure you're prepared in advance, but also because you don't have a computer, no one else has a computer. So there's not going to be someone there fact checking you. Feel confident in yourself and the research that you've done. And everyone is in the same place. So don't see yourself as, again, don't compare yourself to other delegates. Keep your head on straight and rely on what you have and what you know you have.
One more thing I can add to that. There's a great article on bestdelegate.com, 15 tips to prepare your research binder. And in that circumstance where you really don't have your computer or access to things, I would check out that article and feel free to see what to put in there. And I'll share that even our co-founders in their research binders, they used to keep the research from prior committees still in there. So it looked thick and intimidating, even though in reality, they were just looking at the documents on like the first third of it. So don't get flustered by it, but if it's a little bit bigger, it's not necessarily a bad thing either. So thank you, Bella, for sharing on that. We also got a number of questions on public speaking. And one of those that we got from Ryan was, how do I practice my speech skills at home? So I know, Bella, you were just sharing with us a little bit about preparation. Could you also share how you recommend people prepare their speech skills at home in advance of a conference?
Yes, I love doing this. This is something that I did a lot when I first started Model United Nations that I felt like helped me improve extremely quickly. My personal technique that I would do to prepare my speech skills at home by myself is I would go to a website, like a random speech topic generator, and I would generate a speech topic for myself, and I would time myself, and I would film myself giving the speech so I could see my body language. And I would do that over and over and over again. Sometimes I would do the same generated topic a couple of times until I felt comfortable and I felt like I had given a speech that I was proud of. Sometimes I would just do them rapid fire and do, completely different automatically generated speeches. That's a great way, honestly, to be able to reflect on yourself is to film yourself speaking, or if you're able to have a parent or a friend that you trust watch and give you feedback. I think those are really great ways to reflect on your own performance and also feel comfortable speaking really quickly.
Great advice. Another question about public speaking that Nehal asked is, how do you stay confident under pressure? Annabelle, would you please share a little bit with us about how you can really stay more confident in those pressure charged situations?
Yeah, I would say the big thing is just keep going. Keep speaking. I think the times where you're the least confident, the times where you're most nervous is when you're not as active. Because when you're not active, you're thinking about how can I get to the next thing. So if you keep yourself busy with those speeches, writing notes, talking to different people, networking, that's how you really give yourself more confidence, because you can then recognize, okay, I'm being active, I'm doing all the things to push the committee forward, get my solutions out there, work with other people. And also another way to just, stay confident when you're under pressure is just not compare yourself. I think people tend to compare themselves the most entering committee because, it's a little intimidating when you walk in and you see people all in their suits and all prepared and, you're prepared too. But when you see everyone, you kind of get that extra nervousness. But just remind yourself you're here for a reason. You got this. You've done all your preparation. Now you just need to put it into execution and just talk to people, get to know everyone. And at the end of the day, just focus on how you can put in your best effort.
Great advice, Annabelle. I'll also share that Luca asked, what should you do if you're too nervous or too anxious to attend a conference? JJ, would you like to share that advice for somebody who might be feeling too nervous to get started and try?
For sure, yeah. So, despite attending many conferences, I still get the same feeling before every single conference, which is a huge bout of nervousness, even some shyness. I think in terms of dealing with this, I have come to the realization that for me personally, I find a lot of comfort in asking for help from others, whether that's your teammates. I've literally said, hey, this is the topic, this is the country I'm representing. Do you have any ideas about what the country of Afghanistan can do about environmental policy in Asia? And my teammates have given me like such support and great ideas. Also, but if you're like an individual delegate and you're just getting to the conference, you're still really nervous about it starting, I like to arrive to my committee session a few minutes early and just kind of talk with people on an interpersonal level. And normally just having those casual conversations with others and asking them where they're from, where they've been, and their experience in Model UN, just kind of hearing that can settle some of those nerves. So when in doubt, don't be afraid to ask for help because Model UN is an activity premised on collaboration. And I'm sure there's more than a few friendly faces who are willing to help either with your team or in the committee itself. And you're already jumpstarting that process of collaboration from the get-go. So I would say, don't be afraid to ask for help. I'm sure there are tons of other people feeling the same way. And realize that this activity is about people coming together and working with one another. So I hope you can find some comfort and solace in that.
Thanks, JJ. Oftentimes, Model UN can be seen as a little bit subjective, and we got a number of questions from all of you on how to approach unfair practices by the chair or by other delegates. And I specifically had an MUN advisor reach out this week, Ruby, and she said, how can we ensure that girls are treated fairly by other delegates and by chairs at conferences? Because she's seen examples of gender discrimination really happening at Model UN conferences on the high school and on the university level. So Sophia, I'd love for you to share some advice and some ways that people can approach gender discrimination or issues of non-inclusiveness that you might see at MUN conferences.
Yeah, of course. So I can definitely speak to this. I'm sure this is kind of a shared experience. It's unfortunately not a unique experience at all. Many times you'll see that you might walk into a committee and you could be one of maybe a handful of girls that are competing. And it can definitely lead to a lot of not only being intimidated, but it's kind of scary and it makes you feel a little excluded. I personally know a lot of people on my own sec that will prefer to wear more traditionally masculine clothing and opt to wear, for instance, like suit pants instead of a skirt out of fear that it might contribute negatively to their awards, which is a really heartbreaking idea. But personally, what I've come to find is that it's more important to be your authentic self and to be true to who you are than it is to kind of default to whatever you think that you're expected to be. I personally make the decision to wear skirts and heels, even though it may make me stand out a little more, because for one, standing out is not a problem in Model UN. And secondly, it gives you confidence. It makes you more appealing to others when they know that you know who you are. And generally, when you have that confidence and when you're able to step into a room unapologetically, no matter who you are, no matter what gender, race, sex, whatever you might be, ultimately, it's that confidence that matters. And I can confidently say that I think that any kind of discrimination or exclusiveness that I may have experienced was completely overcome by the idea that I wasn't apologetic about who I was. And I don't think anyone should be in MUN at all. And it should definitely contribute and help your performance. So that's my best advice.
Thanks, Sophia. Bella, do you have anything else you want to add on that, either from the college level experience or from a chair's perspective?
Yeah, I think that the best thing that I could think of as a delegate and also as a chair is to be available to the committee. And I say this again as both a delegate and a chair, be available to the committee as an ally. I am a woman myself, but I understand that sometimes sexism is not experienced equally, or it's not experienced like indiscriminately. And so there have been times in committees where I felt safe, but I've had other women come to me and say like, hey, something is making me feel unsafe. And I have really felt the need to always be available and always be accessible and present in those situations, because I know very easily that that could be me in another situation. And it's so helpful to have someone there that you feel like you can go through something like that together with. So I would definitely agree with Sophia. Like, there's a lot that you can do to overcome, but I do think in cases where you are feeling unsafe or uncomfortable, that you should always be an example of what you would want back to you. And that's something I did both as a chair to create a safe space and as a delegate to try and encourage strong conduct that I felt really helped overcome something that can sometimes be pretty upsetting.
And I'll share too, this is when you should turn to your faculty advisor or to your head delegate if really the chair isn't catching it and it's not a safe environment. First, feel free to elevate to the chair if the chair is not the one doing it, but these dynamics are happening in your block or in the room in general, because they may be able to help if they just see it, and sometimes they don't. And if that doesn't work, do elevate it to your faculty advisor, to your head delegate. They have meetings with the conference, and conferences want to be because they want people to come back year after year. And if you create an environment where students aren't happy or feel that negativity, that's not something that really anybody wants. So we can all work together to create a more inclusive and welcoming Model UN community, and pay attention to dynamics, whether it's gender or race or sexuality or anything else. Make sure everyone feels included and welcome in the conferences that you're participating in. Next question we have on how to approach unfair practices. A question we got is, what do you do when the chair, excuse me. The question is, how do you make it so the chair has no doubt that you're the best delegate in committee, so that it's 100% clear that you're the one that should win that award? JJ, could you share your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I think I will preface by saying that different chairs prioritize and value different things. So I would say there's no one definitive way to really show that you're distinguishing yourself as the best delegate, given that it can be pretty subjective. But one thing that I really like to do is to always communicate with your chair. So oftentimes chairs will communicate before or after committee session to either provide feedback, or you can pull them aside for a second. And I always like to just have an upfront conversation with them to ask, hey, what is one way that I can maybe frame my country within the overall committee? Chairs are there to help you. And so I think, if you're not having those conversations with your chair, then you just have no way of understanding what they're thinking about, what they're prioritizing. I've received feedback from chairs that they really want to see collaboration. They want to see, if delegates are finishing early, that they're putting in an effort to help others in the committee work towards their own goals or to collaborate with other groups. And so I think just having that conversation with your chair to understand how they think, and then adjusting the way that you're being a delegate in turn, can be a really effective strategy, right? There's no one way that you should be entering in a committee, because it's not formulaic at all. I want to emphasize something that Sophia was saying, which is that you have to be flexible, you have to be adaptable. And part of that means being able to understand exactly what your chair is looking for, and being able to communicate with them about that.
Thanks, JJ. And we got a great question in the chat from Angel. And that was on, how do you really stand out in a large committee, in a committee with over 100 delegates? Do any of our panelists have advice for either a double delegate committee or just a large room, how you can make yourself stand out in those style GA committees?
I definitely have advice on this. And it's funny because I was in this committee that I'm going to talk about with JJ. And we were in a committee that was like 175 delegates. It was a very large single delegate General Assembly, and it was on Zoom. And something you realize when there are that many people is that it's really, at the end of the day, it's not always about who is going to write the best resolution or who is going to give the best speeches, because there are just so many people to judge. Oftentimes when you're in a very big committee, it's about being strategic. It's about what can the dais see? What is the dais going to observe? And a key trick that I understood in that committee is I realized that when the dais came into the room to observe, you wouldn't be able to tell because there would be 60 people in an unmoderated caucus room, but you would hear a bing because he would come in and it would start recording. And anytime I heard that bing, I made sure that I was extra alert, that I tried to get a moment in to speak, that I made really impactful points, or when I couldn't speak, that I was encouraging people in the chat, that I was encouraging other people to speak because I knew that he was watching. And that allowed me to also let up when he wasn't there and to let other people speak and to bring out the best and be strategic at the same time. And that was something that really helped me stand out. So it's oftentimes not just about your abilities and that you bring, it's about how are you able to frame your experience and how are you able to show the dais what you're able to do. And also, how are you able to bring out the best? How are you able to encourage other people? Are you able to create a community more than just making a block, making a resolution? Are you able to create a space that feels welcoming and warm and like a group of people that could be friends outside of MUN? So those are all of my tips of advice from a very, very large committee. And I hope that's helpful.
Love that, Bella. So whether you're virtual or you're in person, make sure you're seen and visible, especially at the right times when you know the chair is watching. It's also great when other delegates are mentioning you or referring to the resolution that your country is in. So make friends, utilize social dynamics to make sure that you're visible and part of that process that's happening. Great advice. And my last one that I want to share, Michelle asked, how do you deal with unfair or first-time chairing, like when you don't get called on in a committee? JJ, do you have anything to share about how to handle that unfair chairing?
Yeah, so I would again also say that the chairing experience can be pretty intimidating. So I also want to say that maybe things just get missed by accident, and that chairs are oftentimes doing the best that they can. So I think one way to compensate for that is to either again talk to the chair privately and to advocate for yourself. If they don't know that you're in the back of the room and you're never getting called, it's really hard for them to correct and adjust that accordingly. And there's ways to do that, right? You can just say, hey, I really wish that I was able to speak in that moderated caucus, but unfortunately, it seems like my plaque has just not been visible from the back. Would it be possible for me to either move up in the committee or even for you to diversify the way in which speakers are getting called? So I think there's very like pleasant and amenable ways for you to ask the chair to accommodate you. Alternatively, if one such way that I've approached maybe unfair or first time sharing is to frame your concerns as committee-wide concerns, right? So you can raise your placard and do a point of inquiry and say, hey, so it seems like the same people have been called to come up and give a speech, but some people in the committee just have not been able to give a speech. Would it be possible for us to diversify or to check the committee tracker so that everyone can get a chance to speak, given that we've all prepared our research and that we're all here to add something new and novel to the debate. So I think chairs are often really appreciative of you maybe looking out for others in the committee. And that can be one way to maybe take the focus off of your individual needs and show that you're thinking about everyone and making sure that everyone can access the committee. And I think this goes back to something that Bella said, which is that allyship, whether across identity lines or accessibility, can be really, really important. So if you're one of those people that has maybe been called more than others, don't be afraid to take some time to make the debate more fair and more equitable for everyone, because I think everyone will appreciate you in the long run for that.
Thanks, JJ. Another question we got from Rebecca. Do you have any advice for effectively representing a nation with controversial policies, especially when they're central to the committee debate? And sometimes when an action might be taken by that nation that other people in the committee might condemn or look unfavorably upon. Sophia, could you share any advice that you have for representing some of those more controversial nations when that's centered to the committee topic?
Of course. So what's key to understand is that, of course, it doesn't need to reflect your own personal beliefs. There are a lot of topics that'll be discussed where you might have your own personal interests and ideas on them, but it doesn't necessarily need to be morally correct or whatnot. And, you know, you want to take yourself out and try to look at it objectively when you're first understanding it. As for representing that delegation, what's key to understand is that in Model United Nations, oftentimes you're not going to actually see these policies take into effect. For instance, there might be a policy that goes really deep into individual information harvesting. And when things like that come up, and that's something that your country is very for, that might be a controversial topic, especially given that most countries don't support the harvesting of individual information, right? For instance. But what I've come to find is that you can always reframe and see the potential of the policy and not the absolute negative of it. Something that I saw in a delegate at one conference was that they had reinterpreted that kind of idea of gathering information as potential towards maybe making a social security program or maybe creating universal health care for that state. And it's all about kind of looking at it in a different setting. Now, of course, with modern affairs coming up, because you're representing states that currently exist to this day, it might be incredibly complex, right? Like, for instance, at the last conference that I was at, I represented Russia, which is an incredibly difficult nation to represent given the current state of international affairs. But what you need to understand is that you can reframe and you can gather other delegates and say, look, we may not agree on everything, but we can agree on the set of policies that are laid in front of us, and to understand that there is potential to everything, and to really gather what their morals and what their ideals are, and to try to stay away from all the controversial bits and say, what can we agree on and what can we gather on as a block in order to make a resolution that reflects all of our interests, but isn't a dividing force of the committee.
Thank you, Sophia. We also got some questions on how can people get more involved in Model UN, whether that's over the summertime or if their school doesn't have an MUN program. I'd love for our panel to share a little bit more about some ways that people can get involved in Model UN over the summer, as well as during the school year if they don't have an MUN program. So Annabelle, would you kick us off on that one?
Absolutely. So I would say the biggest thing is just get involved with Best Delegate. I've grown so much as, just a Model UNer from all of Best Delegates programs. I remember, so I started getting involved with Best Delegate around when COVID hit. I think I had just come back from my February conference and then we were in lockdown. And I was like, oh, what other Model UN stuff can I do? And then Best Delegate started offering all these virtual programs. They had conferences throughout all the months and different debates, and they had all these summer camps, and they've continued to do that. And it was just amazing for me throughout the pandemic, but also coming out of the pandemic, to just have this great space where I could meet people from around the world and also just practice my MUN's skills, not just on the circuit, but in a bit of a more informal setting. And it's just been a great opportunity. I definitely recommend to all of you who are seeking more opportunities to get involved in Model UN, but might not have necessarily the access to go to all of the different conferences on the circuit, to consider either doing Best Delegate Saturday conferences or all of the summer camps. They have programs in person, but also virtual for those of you who can't necessarily go to an in-person program. There's a lot of different opportunities, and it's just a great place to meet new people who have similar interests as you.
Thanks, Annabelle. That's always awesome to hear. We've loved having her at our programs over the years, and we really have built an amazing community of students that come back and participate in a lot of different programs and end up serving as student volunteers. Annabelle's come back and chaired many of our conferences as well, as a student leader, which has been awesome to see. I'll also share, Phyllis asked, as an instructor new to Model UN, are there any resources that could equip me to teach Model UN? And Sophia, I'll let you share this one, and then I also have a resource that I'd love to share with the community as well. So any advice for instructors, Sophia?
Of course. So when you want to be an instructor, right, I'm a secretary at my club. something that I've come to find is it's best to put yourself in their shoes and try to understand what your club needs in that time. Like if your club needs just the general basics, I'm sure Best Delegate has lots of resources that will guide you through, parliamentary procedure and committee rules and how to write a resolution paper. But if your club needs, for instance, confidence, right? Like if the majority of your club is having trouble public speaking and going up for a moderated caucus, or if your club needs tips and tricks on gathering a block for an unmoderated caucus, what really helps is to understand that you can hold your own mocks. Our school does a lot of mocks at the beginning of the year to try to kind of weed out what the issue is, what the weaknesses and strengths are, and then target those particularly, because then it really reflects in awards, because you can really benefit not only each individual delegate, but a club as a whole. And that's incredibly important. Anything from kind of 1 minute speaking swags to setting down like kind of a practice resolution, I've come to find is incredibly helpful. And ultimately, if you try your best as an instructor or a secretariat member or an officer or your secretary general, then it really does make an impact. And so, like, do your own research and put yourself in the perspective of what that delegate might need or what your club might need. And then eventually your team and whatever delegate you might be assisting will definitely benefit and definitely improve as the course of their MUN career goes on.
Thank you, Sophia. I'm going to go ahead and share a couple of best delegate resources for everyone and some different ways that you can continue to gain your MUN skills. And then after that, we're going to do one last round of speed tips from all of our panelists. So first, I want to share with all of you some upcoming opportunities to continue to learn Model UN. One initiative that we have going on right now is free webinars for your school. If your school would like some personalized advice from some of our amazing web experts, I know that Bella and Ryan and JJ and many others have been helping us to deliver these. You can get a session from our team on procedure or public speaking style or public speaking structure or just an advanced to get the chance for us to answer your students' questions. So if you're interested, please feel free to submit the form. You can find a link at bit.ly/MUN webinar, and we'd be happy to do a session with your school. First come, first serve. We have a few more spots available this year for some resources for your individual school. I'll also share we have some amazing opportunities over the summer to have a lot of fun and continue enhancing your MUN skills so you can win many MUN awards and just feel more confident too. At our program, you'll get the chance to become a more collaborative global citizen and enhance your public speaking skills. You'll get the chance to connect with other high performers and amazing people like Annabelle and Bella and so many others. And you'll get to make friends with the students and the staff who really care about the world and like geeking out over Model UN and these topics. And you'll also receive personalized mentorship. Our MUNers, like you can see, JJ and Ryan and Bella have all served as some of the mentors at Best Delegate. And as you saw, they've had experience at 30 plus conferences, and they'll be there to give you personalized feedback and help you to really improve your MUN skills. So if you're interested, feel free to check out our in-person programs this summer. We're going to be in the DMV area at Georgetown in June and July. We're going to be in New York City at Columbia. We're going to be at BU in Boston. We'll be out in Texas at UT Dallas and Richardson in July. We'll be out at UCLA, UC Berkeley, and UC Irvine in California. And we're also coming out to Rutgers in New Jersey. So if you have students that are interested, I highly recommend it. It's really fun. We have middle school programs as well as high school and high school advanced programs. And for those of you interested in becoming student leaders, it's a really great way to gain more experience that can help you help your MUN program. I'll also share we've got virtual programs. So if traveling to one of those places is not possible, and if you want more resources to help you succeed, check out the Virtual MUN Institute. We've got 4 weeks of programs for high school, middle school, and elementary school students. I know we saw a question from a 5th grader earlier. You can absolutely start participating in Model UN at a young age. And we also have private coaching available for anyone that really needs to help boost their confidence to prepare for MUN conferences. And if we have any teachers, we also run a Virtual Advisor Institute, a 3-day virtual online program to help you feel confident to help your students run a successful MUN program. So those are just a few of the resources that we have. And I also want to share, if you have any questions about any of Best Delegates resources, please feel free to email us at support@bestdelegate.com or give us a call or schedule a call with one of our mentors. We're always happy to answer your general questions about Model UN and about all of the Model UN programs that Best Delegate offers as well. And with that, I want to turn it back over to our amazing panelists. We're going to do one final speed round of any last tips that all of you have for everyone joining us today. So any final advice that you have for Model UNers to help them win awards and succeed in Model UN? Let's start off with Annabelle.
Yeah, I would say kind of just step outside of yourself and focus on less of how do I get the award, but more how can I push committee forward? That's really the key thing. Because at the end of the day, the award doesn't really so much matter. It's more how well did you think you did? Because cheering and judging can be a little bit subjective. So more of how can I push committee forward? How can I contribute? How can I make sure that this solution gets out there? Focus more on the fact that there's an issue at hand and you have to solve it. And then that's how you get awards, because people are going to recognize that if you're there not just to win the award, but to actually solve an issue, be active, you really care about the world and the world's problems and how we can come together and collaborate on how to make the world a better place, that's what's going to make you stand out. And that's also what's going to make you feel better about yourself as a delegate, because those are the people that delegates really admire.
Thanks, Annabelle. Next up, Ryan. Any last advice for everyone?
For sure, yeah. Number one, put in the work. If you can't be the best speaker there, if you can't be the best debater there, you can absolutely be the hardest worker, and that will get you somewhere. Be nice to everyone. You never know what they were dealing with before the conference, what they're dealing with after the conference, what they're dealing with during the conference, whether that, explicitly benefits you in the moment. It might, because you will see people again at other conferences, in college, at the Best Delegate Model United Nations Institute. Like, you will run into people again. So always be nice. And at the end of the day, remember, like, it is Model UN and it is serious, and you're talking about serious things that are impactful. But at the same time, it's also like diplomacy role playing. Have fun. If you are not having fun, chairs can tell. And if you are having fun, you're maybe not worrying as much about awards, which means you are doing other things that help the committee and creating a good environment. And as a chair and CD in the past, I've given awards for people who've created a good environment and to have made sure that everyone is having a good time.
Thanks, Ryan. Great advice. Next up, Bella.
Yeah, I would second everything so far, especially like really being willing to work hard, because usually the best delegate is the one that cares the most in some degree. But I would say for my feedback, reflect on yourself all the time. I was very successful awards wise, and I was still constantly thinking about what could I have done to improve? What could I do better next time? What did I do last time that I really liked that I should have done this time instead? I said before, like, don't compare yourself to other delegates, but I really would encourage thinking about yourself critically, thinking about your performance. Even if you are winning that best delegate gavel, what could you have done differently? Like Annabelle said, it's really subjective, and it could have just as easily been someone else in the committee if it wasn't you. So are there ways that you can improve? Are there ways that you can have more fun while also being successful? Always think about those things. And if people bring them up to you, don't see it as criticism. Don't see it as, oh, this person wants to knock me down. Think about why they might be saying that, and if it's something that you could incorporate. And if it's not, that's okay. You know yourself the best. But do be proactive about thinking about yourself and your own success and how you want to get there.
Thanks, Bella. Great advice. JJ.
Awesome. Yeah, again, agree with everyone else. I think one of the things that you can do is to ask yourself, what is the best award I can give myself out of any conference experience? Whether that's setting a goal to give a really great speech, to get a note from another delegate, to be remembered in a positive way by the people that you might see at the next conference. I think that is honestly like the best advice I can give you. And if a material award comes along with that, then, that's like, just another outcome. But to ask yourself, right, how can I improve with each conference experience? Or how can I take this country, which I may be representing for the last time, and really learn about what it means to stand up for the issues and the experiences of a given people? These are all questions that I think you should be asking yourself as a delegate, and stuff that I've definitely taken away in my own experience. Because again, I want to point back to something I said earlier. It's not really like the particular awards that I remember, but it's the friends and the experience that I remember, right? Like, that's why like it's really great to see like Ryan and Bella, who I've competed with, and at every single turn, right? And so I really want you to think, what is something I can take away out of this experience? And how might that be an award in and of itself?
Thanks, JJ. And Sophia, any last tips for everyone?
Sure. So my last tip is that ultimately there is a little bit of, subjectiveness to awards, but you also have free will and you can contribute and you can change the course of committee. That power that you have in committee only dies when you let it die. And so even if that delegate that you think is going to get best Del raises their placard and you're freaking out and you're like, oh my goodness, I think I just lost. You didn't, because the awards aren't in yet. And so you just have to keep trying. You have to keep raising your placard. And even though you might be thinking to yourself, it's over, I did terrible, you just have to give yourself that chance and to fight until your chair closes committee. And even if things don't go well, because not every time you're going to gavel, right? There are so many interesting people that you're going to meet in committee. Like there are really some Easter eggs out there of people that are incredibly interesting and incredibly passionate. And these might be people that you go to college with, right? Or people that you might go to high school with. And you're going to run into them and talk about this one weekend committee, and that could grow into a whole lifetime friendship or a whole lifetime relationship. And that's just really exciting to think about, that you have this opportunity to spend a whole weekend with people that are just as interested and just as passionate about something that you studied for, however long you took to prepare. And that's really a blessing that you get to share that. And like from my personal experience, I can say that my secretariat of my club just happens to be my close-knit group of friends. And so those are like the little memories that really contribute to who you are, not only as a delegate, but as a person. And so really try to make the most of all those potentials that you have, is my advice.
Well, I want to give a huge thank you to all of our panelists for joining us this evening and sharing your expertise and your passion and your love of Model UN with everyone here today and with everyone watching online. We truly appreciate it. Model UN is what it is because of all of the people who do it. So I encourage you to keep at it. Even if you're not winning awards, that's not what it's about. It's about learning and growing, gaining confidence and making friends. And awards are a piece of the puzzle, but it's not the only part of the puzzle. So please continue to put yourself out there and be the best delegate that you can be. And if you ever need any resources or help, don't hesitate to check out the articles and resources on bestdelegate.com. And also feel free to check out our training workshops, our conferences, and our summer programs. And for those of you asking, there will be a recording of this. It will be online on our YouTube within the next couple of days. So thank you all so much for joining us this evening. I really appreciate it. And the questions we didn't get to, we're going to do a little bit of a social media takeover and try to answer those on our social media over the next week or so. So if you had a question that didn't get answered tonight, check out our Instagram and we'll do our best to get to some of those remaining questions over the next couple of days. Thank you all, and please have a great evening, and I really appreciate everyone's time here today. Bye, everyone.